Welcome to another episode of Where in the World. And I'm so excited to welcome back, I think, a friend of A Step Forward. Latrice, welcome back to A Step Forward. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. How have things been going since we last saw you? It would be great just to get an update.
It has been a whirlwind, like a good whirlwind. The album, the single, and the album, they are both doing really, really well, climbing the charts. And I, my thing was just, I just want to get it out there. But it's really people are really gravitating to it and loving the message. Been in a few shows since, been performing a lot, actually gearing up to do some more shows, and and excited about promoting this single, Stellar Award nominations, all of that. So much is
Yeah.
happening.
This is amazing, and it's always great to hear the success of, like, I guess, when with what God is doing in their lives, especially because we know that the music is never just about a music for any Christian artist. There is so
Right.
much more that goes into it, but it's driven by excellence, but it's also driven by, the burden for purpose. So it's really great to hear that you're seeing so much positive reception and fruit to what's been going on. So before we
Yes.
break down some more into, we'll talk some more about the music and kind of what's happening with you with your current projects. I want to start with a bit of a fun game. And
Okay.
this might throw you off a little bit, but indulge me if you would.
I love it.
What is one question that you don't get asked but wish you would?
Are you single or are you married? Do you desire to be married? I mean, hey, let's put it out there.
They don't ask you that?
They do not. They do not.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that question?
I would like to, I think it's kind of unassuming, because I don't really put my dating life out there. A lot of times I can come off as if I have someone, but I really don't, because you just have to be careful. You never know. But yeah, I would like for people to know that I am single and interested.
I love, yes, can we be honest about that, Glory? I'm here
Can
for
we
it.
be honest? Yes.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing to desire if it's in your heart, and we need to embrace that more, and let the people know, which I think is lovely, and be intentional about it. And I think that's really encouraging for others. I mean,
Absolutely.
how do you find navigating that, particularly as a single woman, and you have a very established platform? What does that feel like, trying to navigate, knowing that that's a heart desire of your own?
I think not. I think I try to stay busy. Try to stay busy and stay focused. You know how they talk about that waiting in the waiting, and I've come to realize that that waiting is just working, doing everything that God has
Mm,
given me to do, and being yet in waiting and working, being honest with Him. With, okay, God, I'm about to take another trip by myself. I would love to
yes.
come home at the end of the day and just maybe not even have a conversation about my day, but just to fall in someone's arms and to be rejuvenated and restored. So, yeah, that's how I feel.
I love that, and that feels so familiar to me. I got married kind of late, actually, later than everybody else. And we
Oh, wow.
celebrate 3 years this year, which has been such a blessing. But when you were walking in,
Congratulations.
thank you. Our story is really special. I love it. But I understand that so much, especially if you have a frontline kind of ministry, or you're occupying space that requires you to be in different places all the time, and you have to come
Yes.
across as confident, strong. You got your stuff together, but
Yes.
where and you question God, like, I'm doing the things you want me to do. You're not asking me to stop my life to wait for
Yeah.
someone. It's praying that that person comes along so that you can walk together. And I believe that God will
Yes.
bless you in that. And He really met me, so I believe what He does for everybody else, He can do for you.
Yes.
So praying that for
Absolutely.
you, Latrice, that's such a blessing to hear that from you. I am
Thank
so
you.
excited to have you. You joined us previously, with another guest at the time with Where in the World in
Yeah.
2022. Already you've mentioned there's been so much updates with regards to great projects happening, stellar award nominations, new projects on the way, albums, etc. Do you feel that a lot has changed for you individually as a person in those 2 years?
I have grown in those 2 years, and I think that that's a part of who I am. I'm forever staying in the space of a student. So I'm always growing. I'm always open to evolving.
Mhm.
Besides getting busy, that's one of the things you need to make sure you are doing. Always staying open to evolving and growing and maturing in your faith. That
Yeah.
that has changed a lot, because since the last time we've talked, I've had different challenges and different situations where I had to say, hey, okay, God, I'm falling back and I'm trusting you all the more. I know you're going to come through, and I know you're going to give me direction or whatever I was seeking him for. So I would definitely say I've grown and matured more in my faith.
That's amazing. And I think that's so encouraging to hear that you're like, we constantly stay in the position of a student. We've never arrived. And if you are, that's
Never.
a bad sign. Or if you think that you
Yes.
have, that's a bad sign. No one out here wants to be
Yes.
stagnant, and no one out here wants to lack
No.
the ability to improve and have greater things happen. And I think it's just really, really encouraging to hear that. Like, I imagine that's kind of reflected as well, like even in your most recent work. Is it Don't Give Up? Tell us like how that has
Yes.
kind of fueled the music, and what was God showing you in the kind of through using the channel of your music and the recent album in kind of teaching you some new things.
I think one of the main things that he was teaching me is that you hear me. You know my voice. Don't second guess it. Don't delay
Love
your
that.
obedience to me. Just know, stay connected, and know that when I tell you to do something, it's me. That is what fuels me and keep me going, because even in things that I don't understand or don't have a full comprehension of, that's the same thing as understanding, but a full plan. That's what I
Yeah.
don't know how to map it out. It's like, okay, God, I know you told me to do this, so I'm going to make this one step. And as I make that one step, I know the next step is going to reveal itself. So that is what keeps me going when I make that first step. And he's like, I got you, girl. And then the next one, I got you, I got you, I got you. That's what keep me going and saying, okay, what we doing next, Lord?
And that takes such courage and faith. And I commend your tenacity to choose to engage with that intentionally. Because a lot of the time, I think human nature, I've got to be guilty of that myself, is we're looking at
Yes.
this process. I'm like, God, I need to see the 3 steps ahead first before I'm going to move. And he's like, no, I need you to take the step first and then I can show you. And that takes real
Yes.
courage. Like, was in adjusting, it sounds like you've got into the rhythm really good. Like, this is what needs to happen. Was it always like that for you, or when did it shift that, like, no, that's the approach I need to have?
It wasn't always like that. I think for me, it really shifted after the pandemic and after the transition of my mother and two of my sisters. It was like God was saying, I gave you that music 7 years ago for now. So just like
Wow.
you trust me then, I need you to continue to trust me now. And it was like, wow, you have really proven yourself and shown me that you do have a plan. Like I wasn't smart enough to even try to map that out.
Yeah.
None of us are smart enough to try to map out our journeys. It's just that we have to trust that whatever he's telling us to do right now, even though we don't see the manifestation of it within a month or a year, it could be for 5 years from now, where you won't be in the space to be able to create, but you had it stored up because you were obedient to him. So in that, it makes me move speedily.
Yeah.
I think and I think we saw a lot of times we don't, because God, I don't want to be looking like a fool. Don't make me be ashamed. But He tells us, those that trust in me, you will not be put to shame. You will not be looking like a fool. And then also on that same token, it's not for you to go around like, I hear God. He told me
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, I thank you that you choose to speak to me, and
Hmm.
that I remain in a space where I can hear you and obey you, regardless of what people may be saying or what they may think.
I think that you just said that so beautifully. And it's so good to be reminded that actually that approach of trust in God, it's not futile. Like, he's made it really clearly as a promise in his word, like, I will not put you to shame. And I don't know how we get
Yeah,
we really forget that in the throes of pressure, or, when time is getting like really intense,
you
or
do.
we're up against
Yeah.
deadlines. But actually, has he let us down yet? It didn't maybe happen the way we wanted it to, or in our
But
timeline,
he
right?
came
But
through.
he
Yes.
delivers every time. And I really respect
Every
that, like you
time.
said, through just the trusting of obedience step by step, God has clearly built a history with you and an intimacy with
Yeah.
you. And if anything, that is something to be coveted more than anything that comes out of the end, product that we produce in our creative space.
Absolutely.
It's what is achieved between you and the Father in
And
that process. And what a privilege! I love that so much. I'm so excited, Latrice. How wonderful!
yes.
And like,
yes.
so going through your profile, like there's just so many accolades there. You have been beautifully mentored by some figures that are quite well renowned and iconic,
Yeah.
particularly in the gospel world. And you yourself have been a mentor for young people and entrepreneurs. Who has stayed supporting Latrice through all of this kind of like amazing journey? And what has that impact been for you?
My family. My family has always been there, and it's extremely impactful knowing that I grew up with these people. They know me inside out. I know them inside out. They've seen the struggles. We've had struggles together. We've had triumphs together. So to know that they have always been there, that's extremely impactful. And it just like hearing God's voice and knowing that He's with you, it fuels you to do the things that you have to do, knowing that I have that support system
Mm, mm, yeah.
regardless. Yeah.
I think we really can't stress enough is the importance of having community, God's family, or just your
Yeah.
tribe, as I like to call it, because getting to these
Yes.
destinations that God is calling us to, whether it's music or some other form of
Yes.
creativity, whatever the purpose that He's burdened on you, no one gets there as an
Yeah.
island.
And right, and your family does, for those who may not have that biological family. It doesn't have to be your tribe. Doesn't have to be your biological family. It can be whomever God choose to surround you with. It can be
Mm,
some people
mm,
in your community or in your church home. So don't feel like you're alone, because you're not. Just open your eyes and pay attention to the people He has consistently put around you that make you feel good, not
mm,
those that
mm.
make you feel bad, or always criticizing and not doing it in love, or helping you to
Right.
grow. But pay attention to that. That's your tribe.
I love that. That is so good. It's so important to be very mindful about the voices that we allow to feed into our walk for a lot of reasons. A lot sometimes we forget that if we're not discerning as to is this building the vision or is this going to actually break it down or stagnate it or
Absolutely.
abort it, like we need to be very intentional about being gatekeepers of that
Yes.
kind of influence. So I love that you
Yes.
said that so much. Let's take a little
Yeah.
step back a little bit about just your music and like your life has been about worship both as an entrepreneur and also as a singer and music artist. What do you feel, or do you feel that maybe there was a specific mission for what God has placed inside of you for your music or and all of your areas of creativity, or do you think that your music has a specific message at all?
I do. I feel like the specific message of my music is to obey God. It's interesting that as a child, I remember my brother, he was our pastor. I remember him preaching a lot of times, and he would say, delayed obedience is just like disobedience.
Obedience. Oh.
And yeah. And when God challenged me, because it was a challenge, because I was like,
Mm,
oh, when He challenged me with doing this album, part one and part two, it was like, okay, God, is this you? I'm not sure if this is you. I don't know if I have a voice or an audience, or what is my message. And throughout that, it has been just surrender and obey. And that's really why we even named it Exodus, the journey of obedience. Because many of us, we talk ourselves out of obeying God because we don't feel qualified. We don't feel validated, or we don't feel like we have the right connections or capital. But He's like, I'm God. I have everything you need. So that is my message to people. Obey God. And stop trying to low key get your friends' opinions of what God has told you to say, because He's God. You know His voice. You good. Just obey.
I love that so much. And I think that is kind of a humbling and a sobering thought that delayed obedience. It's really not
Yeah.
something to not take seriously. It's really something that you cannot be reverent towards. If God is calling
Yeah.
you, get to walking, because out of obedience or outside of walking in
Yeah.
obedience, we're actually not safe. There is so much protection and
Oh,
provision, as you say, for the vision if he's given it to you, but you got to walk towards him and
yes.
towards it to see that activated. And I think that's a real
Yes.
testament of maturity of faith and mindset. Do you think in this generation that we're engaging with that as we should?
Um, you know what, I can't really say. I can only speak to the people, who I'm around. I
Hmm.
try to be careful, and I'm hesitating because I try to be careful to not generalize. I would like to say that I am doing my part with those that I am called to,
Yeah.
and just to make sure that the message is getting across. I would encourage those that would hear this. Make sure you're being intentional with getting the message across to those that you are called to, those that are in
Hmm.
your circle, that you're challenging one another to trust God and to walk by faith and to obey Him regardless, because that's the only way we're going to please Him. It's easy for us to
Yeah.
say, God, I want to please you. God, I love you. I trust you and I have faith in you. But when He
Hmm.
says, okay, sell everything tomorrow and next week I want you to up and move to New York,
I know. Are we
hey,
ready?
are you ready?
And
Yeah,
you've heard
so yeah.
stories like
So
that. Yeah, for sure. Sorry,
yeah.
continue what you were saying.
No, so I want to make sure that I'm being intentional with those that are within my reach
Hmm.
to make
Hmm.
sure I'm getting that message across and encouraging them to get the message across so that we all can create that ripple effect.
Yeah. That's so encouraging to hear that. And I think that's important to have as a perspective. I think we're also kind of inundated with social media and media, even about the church and what we're doing as
Yes.
a generation or whatever. And sometimes it's easy to get caught into that still is quite a singular narrative and it's not the full perspective. And that can be a little
Mhm.
bit derailing on following through on my obedience. It can be disheartening. So to hear you talk
Yes.
about and encourage and champion, you need to do what your lane has been kind
You're-
of assigned to you to be doing. The people that you're
Yeah, and
called
even
to, are you
yes.
doing what's necessary there?
And you know what? And the people, I'm aware that the people that I'm called to are those that follow me on social media. So you won't only just get me talking about my music or a few laughs or a few workouts or whatever, but hey, I'm going to be encouraging you to obey God, trust God,
Mm,
have
mm.
faith. Did you read today? Did you pray today? Who did you love today? Who did you help today? So that's how we reach and get the message out.
I love that so, so much. And you can just hear, even from your personality, there's just such an overflow of joy and inspiration. And you genuinely
Yeah.
have this heart for people to do well with their obedience with God. Get to where,
Yeah.
God wants you to be. And that is the tool in obedience. And I wanted to say, like, you have got such an inspiring kind of journey through both your music accomplishments, your business, your businesses, multiple businesses from what I can see, which is super like full on, guys. Go and check it out. Latrice is the real deal. But what I would say is, like, and clearly we're getting the preciousness of actually hearing your heart behind all of these things. What advice will you have for others following you in their hopes for similar aspirations to be so impactful on multiple kind of dimensions and multiple platforms? What would you encourage those that would love to follow similarly in those types of footsteps?
I would say, first of all, because that's what I had to do, allow God to show you how He sees you. And that doesn't just happen in a day or in a few weeks, but that's what spending time with Him as you are faced with different challenges within yourself, within that battleground of the mind. God, help me to see myself the way you see me. And when I am I'm able to conceive that and grasp that, I can see the better and the greater, the greatness that you have for me, and to authentically be true to that, to who He has called you to be, to who you are in Him. And that's what I say start with, because once you start with that and you have your God identity, nothing and no one can sway you from whom you know God has said you are and what He has placed in you. So stay focused with allowing Him to show you how He sees you, and be authentic to that.
I love that authenticity. There's just nothing like it, and I think we crave that, don't we? We are all craving something real. So
Yes.
there's only one version of you that's going to be real. Let's bring it to the table, right?
Every day, consistency. I'm going to be consistent, and that's one thing that I require out of people that I'm around, consistency.
I love that so much. This has been such an inspiring and just encouraging conversation, Latrice. We want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank
My final
you.
question before we let you go is, what
Okay.
projects are you currently working on, and where can people continue to find and follow your work?
Okay, so I'm not sure exactly where you are, but I'm currently preparing to take a missions trip to Wales with a local church here.
That's amazing.
So I'm excited about that. We'll be there for about 10 days. After that, I come back hitting the ground, getting ready for the Stellar Awards. And then I'm preparing for a local production of the musical Hairspray.
Wow. I love that so, so much. This is amazing. And obviously we spoke about your single, your album. Where can people find and follow that too?
The easiest place is to go to my website. That's latricepace.com, and it'll take you to all things Latrice.
I love it so much. Latrice, it's been such a blessing. We pray and just
Always.
trust God is going to be just amplifying your voice. It is such a needed encouragement to everybody that is in creative spaces or in entrepreneurial spaces. And you've been such a blessing and a shining light. And I know that God will
Thank
honor
you.
that in every way. Thank you so, so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Bye.